Hi, Kirsten Lovett, Shamanic Coach at Now Moment Journey. Welcome to the podcast today, June 6th, 2024. It's summertime in most parts of the world. It's been a while since I've done a podcast episode. I just wanted to kind of let everybody know that I'm trying to be more regular with podcast episodes, but sometimes there's some various things that happen that need to be taken care of. And so anyway, I just wanted to let you know that I've been wanting to do an episode for a while now, and I'm just so glad to record it today. Today's episode might be a little bit different than other episodes, although it depends on how you look at it. But in that I might talk about a lot of different things. There's been a lot of converging in my mind and heart and spirit lately in terms of what I want to communicate on this podcast, so that I think maybe you will find helpful. So let me just jump in and you'll see what I mean. This past week, I'd say it was a couple days ago, Sunday, so it was about 4 or 5 days ago, I did a weather ceremony, by myself. And actually, my sister joined me on a separate, she did it at her own pace and at a different time during the day. Because last year, and I may have to backtrack on this to explain a little bit, but last year was the first year I received kind of a spirit message from the helping spirits I work with, that they said, look, we want you to do a certain kind of ceremony at the beginning of the hurricane season. And I happen to live in, Florida. So it's generally the hurricane season starts in June. And so they said, we want you to do this ceremony at the beginning of the season, at the end, and at the end of the season. But the beginning is the most important thing. And so that was a message that was only given to me last year. So about a year ago. Just to give you a timeline and time frame of how this has been happening in my life. 12 years ago, I started working with sacred tobacco, and I've been working with it ever since. I'd say about 7 years ago was the first time I received my first message while praying with sacred tobacco out in the elements at the genesis of a storm coming our way at the time. I received a message from the spirits saying, you need to start working with weather. And that was while praying with sacred tobacco and working with it in the elements, just outside my front door. I wasn't on a mountaintop anywhere. I wasn't in the jungle. Although those are fine places to get those messages. But I'm just saying this happened in the middle of suburbia. Okay. So now what I'm, some of you may know this already, but this is after working with sacred tobacco for very regularly, as in like every week for many, 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 many years. And so that's kind of how that rapport and connection and sake, and that's an Andean word, Ceque. That's how that connection was built. And I've talked about that a little bit more in other episodes, and I will continue to talk about that just so that it becomes very, in the structure of these episodes. So for me, working with weather was tied to and is tied to tobacco. Now, what's interesting is that's not the only thing it's tied to, at least in my experience. There's plenty of people who work with weather who don't even work with tobacco, wouldn't even consider it as part of their wheelhouse. So it's not like it has to be done that way. It's just the way that it evolved, I should say, in my case. Okay. And, it turns out where I live is in the general latitude of, I'd say I'm more on a similar latitude as the Mayans and some of the, ancient peoples of Mexico. And I know for a fact that they use tobacco in relationship with and work with respectfully tobacco with the elements and with, different kinds of rain ceremonies and things like that. So from a latitudinal aspect, it kind of makes sense that it happened that way. Anyway, so, but this particular ceremony, because I wanted to tell you a little bit about the background of how I kind of got to this point so far. Weather work has been very, very, shall we say, no set curriculum. And to some extent, I think there's a lot of spirit teaching that is very, organizationally, the antithesis of our scholastic system. How when you go to school or you go to college or you go to any kind of course, there's usually a curriculum then they give you a syllabus with a list of things that you're going to do and when you're going to do them and how many hours it's going to take you and, when it's due. And, so there's a structure there, right? So doing this kind of work without a human teacher and with spirit teachers, whether they be plant spirit teachers, or sometimes I work with my medicine bundle, which is from a tradition I was initiated into in South America, in Peru. So that's another source. Sometimes I work with, and I'd like to introduce these people into the mix, with the Nordic people, the Nordic spirits, the Nordic pantheon, which may include, working with deities and offerings to those deities. And, maybe I might use candles and various things. Okay, so I'll get to that in a minute. And I also work with Nepalese traditions in terms of my own practice, but I'm probably not going to mention that too much right now. But that's a very important part of what I do too. In my own personal practice, in terms of what I teach and what I guide people in, I'd say it's a combination of what I've been initiated into, as well as things that I've learned. And when I say initiated, I mean from actual human beings. And that is a very rare occurrence, I think, for most people. It's great when it happens. You're lucky if it happens to you. I'm lucky it happened to me. It's not, thank God, it's not the only way to learn and continue to practice with spirits, because if that were the only way to do things, that would be really difficult. So I'm here to tell you that spirit teaching is, as receiving spirit teachings as a way of learning, it's different. It can be, depending on your personality type, if you like things organized and, like that, it can be a little bit unnerving sometimes. But on the other hand, it can be kind of freeing in a way, because things come to you when you need them, really, and which is hard, because sometimes we don't know when we need things, and as human beings, but the spirits do. They know better than us. And at least the helping spirits, I'm talking about benevolent helping spirits that are always engaged with you, whether you know it or not. There's always other spirits that aren't so benevolent, right? We know about those. But I'm just talking about the helping spirits right now. So anyway, so this weather ceremony, when I was putting it together last year, I was like, okay, what's the most basic way for me to do this? So that, because I knew it was going to be something I would want to share with other people, as well as do on my own. Because let's face it, I don't know what side of the spectrum you are in terms of climate change or climate denial. Hopefully you're akin to climate change and understand that something big is happening on our planet. I'm not here to convince you if you're in denial about it. I'm sure you have a list of reasons why you don't believe it. I'm on the side of, science in terms of climate change is happening. It's already been happening. I live in Florida, so it's been happening here for a minimum of 10 years already. So we're well aware of it. And there's plenty of states and countries around the world that have been experiencing very difficult conditions, and we're not even the worst of the conditions. So my point is, at least in this area of the podcast so far, is this weather ceremony was kind of like going to be a way for, I think, for me to be able to use my gifts in a way to help the community, whether it's on a spirit level with the earth spirits where I live, whether it's the water spirits where I live, and then be able to kind of like connect that to, so that other people can do it where they live. Because we all live in different environments. Some of us live near the mountains. Some of us live near maybe a lake or a river. Some of us don't live near either one of those. Maybe it's just a very, a plains kind of, lots of fields, and, or we might live in a suburban area where it's just very, very urban, and there's not a whole lot of nature around. But you might have to source your inspiration from like 300 miles from where you live, maybe the mountains are far away, but in your state, etc. You catch my drift. I mean, obviously down where I live, the Gulf is a very big part on one side of the state, and the Atlantic is a big part on the other side of the state. In other areas, and at least in North America, you have rivers, that you might source from in terms of what you're thinking of when you do this ceremony. So basically what I thought was, okay, how can I do this so that it like speaks to me and other people, right? And honors, the elements. So I thought, okay, well, let's just break it down. We have earth, we have water, we have fire, we have wind or air, and then we have ether. And at first I was just dealing with the 4 elements, but ever since I've been learning Nepalese shamanism, mostly through mantras, through a traditional shaman who I highly recommend, named Bola Banstola. One of the things that they teach in that tradition is about earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So, and I guess you could call ether maybe like the spirit realm, but, and there's also etheric realms, and there's also etheric fields around pretty much everything. So I thought, okay, let's just do it like that. And since I work with candles so much, I decided to go ahead and incorporate the candles and have that be powered by, of course, my breath. And yes, intention is a big part of it. It's a little bit more, it's like intention on steroids when you do ceremonies with the elements, because the elements are like so awe-inspiring. And in this respect, it's a little bit different than doing like ritual or ceremony, even with one spirit group at a time. The elements are just like, if you can think of the most like awe-inspiring energy, that's what it feels like. Ergo, therefore, this is the kind of work that really needs to be done with a lot of people. It's not the kind of thing for me to be a heroine or a hero or whatever and be like, I can do it all by myself. You know what I mean? Weather work is like really meant to be done with groups of people, groups. And of course, there's a couple major things you got to keep in mind. I'm just telling you what I know so far after doing it. I don't do weather work all year round. I tend to do it more in the summers because that's the climate I live in. But I have done it in the winter a little bit here and there. So it's not something I do every day. What I do every day is I pray with sacred tobacco. So I'd say if you're going to do weather work, you should probably have some kind of ally. it's just the way I roll. I recommend tobacco as a sacred plant spirit, and there's various ways that you can do that. We talk about this in the Patreon that myself and my sister run, called Shamanic Earth Medicine. We have a lot of other things we talk about as well. But you want to build up a very, powerful and strengthening relationship with a spirit ally to work with weather. Is it required? No, but it's recommended, especially if you're going to do it a lot. Especially if you're going to lead ceremonies, I'd say too. I don't think it's required, maybe if you're going to just participate in a ceremony so much, as long as the person leading the ceremony is, trying to set up sacred space and has a lot of helping spirits, along for the ride. And that's another topic altogether. So, okay, so that's what I recommend first off, if you're going to do this kind of work. This is of interest to you. And then number 2, I probably should have started with this one. I think this is probably the most important thing next to having a spirit ally. It is not weather manipulation. Do not move storms. Do not move things around. I've met people very, very talented people in the past, prior to becoming more knowledgeable about these things. So I didn't know this was not a great thing at the time, but they were kind of showing off to me. I've mentioned this before, so some of you may have heard this, but they were kind of showing off to me and saying how great it was that they could move a storm from their location away from them so that the storm wouldn't bother them. Now, I don't think you should be bragging about that. And number 2, one of the first things I was told through working with this sacred tobacco spirit was, do not move storms. Do not move them. And I'd say it probably goes the same with, with other things. Now that's the tough part, because I'll tell you, it's very, very hard. I almost slipped, cancel, clear. I almost broke that promise once, because it's really tempting when you're not sure of what's going to happen. You kind of want to go, respectfully submitted here. Can I ask you to? No, it's just, and I'm not saying I'm above it, because I'm not. It's happened to me too, where I've been really tempted to do something, and just to kind of protect myself. And it's just the thing that we kind of stick to. And some of this we learned from this one sentence we learned from Evelyn Riesdyk, who is a Nordic practitioner, that please lightning go cloud to cloud and not harm anyone or anything. We are all very gentle down here. So even if let's say you're sitting at home and all of a sudden the storm approaches, and you kind of think for 2 seconds to pray, I'd like to pray that the lightning goes cloud to cloud and not down to the earth. We're all very gentle down here. So, I guess you could say that's maybe directing it, but it's not. You're not moving a system, you're just asking its permission to, not harm us. Now, one of the basic things that we do, but again, this is in tandem with doing a ceremony, or let's say working with tobacco. Sometimes we do it like that when we pray, but you could do this without tobacco. You could just pray, or in any way that you hold your hands. It doesn't matter if you pray without doing this or this, it doesn't matter. You could say, and I think we got this from some other sources as well, but please don't harm anyone or anything. If you're speaking to a storm, we ask your permission to please not harm anyone or anything. We know you need to go where you need to go, but we're just asking the storm not to harm, life, whether it's humans, animals, plants, etc. which I think is pretty effective so far. Knock on wood. I have any wood. I got some wood. I could knock on these little trees here in the picture. I think it's so far so good. And again, a lot of this stuff that I'm talking to you about has been based on just trial and error. I came across, and some of this was in tandem with working with my sister too, where we tried one time to ask the storm to dwindle into nothingness. And what ended up happening when we did that, because I was thinking, oh, if I ask it to kind of like dwindle into nothingness, maybe that'll like help it not be so destructive. Well, what ended up happening is it just slowed it down, and then it kind of made it worse. I mean, it didn't harm anybody, but luckily it made what we were trying to do, it didn't work, is what I'm saying. So choose your words wisely. And there's actually, but the main thing is don't move them. That's all. Don't move these storms around. Don't tell them to go. Don't tell them to go to another place other than you. With the, if you know what you're doing and you've got a lot of skill in this area, there's some ways where you can ask it to go out to sea, but I mean, you're still kind of pushing it because you're still telling it what to do. And, I just have learned that that's not a good idea. At the timing of this recording in 2024, if you're coming to this recording in a future day and I've changed my tactic on that, I'll let you know. But that's as of today. And I've been doing this for about 7 years. So if you know somebody who's more experienced, definitely go with what they're telling you. So there is some ethics involved and I'd say this is true for any kind of like, whether you're like a Wiccan or a heathen or a pagan, or you're a Christian who practices, magic. There's plenty of people who do that. Or you're a mystic, or you're a shamanic practitioner, or you're a Reiki person, or something like that, or you work with energy, you're an energy healer. I think already that there's some element, no pun intended, of ethics involved in what we do. And so you're just, I think weather really helped me understand power a little bit better because, I hadn't, up until that point, I hadn't really done a whole lot of personal magic. I'm starting to do a little bit more of that now. So I do understand that. And there's a lot of people who can teach you skills about that. But when you deal with weather, it really brings it home. Like, you really don't want to be on that side of karma where you're wishing something not so nice on people you don't even know, and you didn't even know any better. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so let's get back to the ceremony I was talking about, the one that they said, but I wanted to tell you those two things. One, don't move storms around. Two, it's helpful to have an ally. And when I say an ally, because I'm in the tropics, the subtropics, and because of the various traditions I come from, I should say I don't come from them, that I've been initiated into or taught, it's just my go-to is tobacco. So that's just, but I use candles a lot too. And that's without tobacco. So, and that's always feels a little bit more Germanic to me. And I suppose that's, but I also like to use the candles with the Andean medicine bundle that I have. So it's a nice kind of mixture of having both traditions in their own way, in their own style, be able to kind of funnel their energy through a candle. And the candle is just a vehicle, right? So just like sometimes we are vehicles to receive messages or healing or energy, and then transmit them out to other people, to the earth, etc. So without telling you too much more about the ceremony, basically, I just ended up going through and saying, thank you and I love you, earth, in Spanish and Quechua. Thank you and I love you, air, water, fire, ether. And they like that. It's interesting. It's kind of hard to describe on this podcast, but I do remember two things happened. One, I was outside right after the ceremony on Sunday, and I was having my cigarette while I was praying with tobacco and smoking. And that's another subject, but I was also having a kind of a sacred moment with tobacco. And I kind of saw in my mind's eye a little heart. You know how sometimes you can use your clairvoyance to sometimes see shapes, especially if you're in nature. I think it's a little bit easier. Sometimes you might see outlines around flowers or plants. But sometimes it's nice. I especially tend to see lovely images like this, thankfully, when I pray with tobacco. And I think that I'm also near a Wachuma plant, which is a San Pedro cactus, which I think also helps because it's been known to stimulate the, even just having it in the presence and praying, you don't even have to ingest it. But so yeah. So anyway, that was lovely. That happened. I saw a little heart. It was in the sky. And then about 24 hours later, after doing this ceremony, which, you know, I'm not really telling you too much about it, except the gist of it is what you need to know is that I was basically saying thank you into a candle. And I was doing rattling and singing. So I was using my voice, using my breath. These are very, for the Nordic, for the people interested in the Nordic and Germanic, this is a very Odin sort of thing to do, because he works with breath and with, you know, message sending and transmission with breath, with the word, you know, os and ansus. So, and I did have, by the way, this was a dual kind of, I should say dual, two prong, I should say. While I had the Andean side doing things, I also had some Nordic rune candles. So I'd like to show you one of the runes that this is as close as I can show you. This is, yeah, there you go. See, now that's Rido. And this is Elder Futhark. So you see, I switched from talking about Andean things to, you know, I kind of have, when you deal with multiple traditions, it's a little like changing gears in a stick shift car. You know, you just you go into a different mode. You know, it's still, you know, dealing with the tradition, but there's just different energies involved. So anyway, so this is Rido. And this is associated with a lot of things, but for our purposes today, oops, let me see if I can get it so that you saw it a little bit. There we go. There we go. So it looks a little bit like an R. And basically, how I've been using it is I will take a little tea light candle, and after I learned, and I'd like to also give a shout out to Marissa Lovett, who is my co-founder of Shamanic Earth Medicine Patreon. She has a Dreaming in the Nine Worlds class that's excellent. So, and she does do a bit about the runes in that class, but it's also about the world tree and the different, you know, things that you can do about dreaming in the world tree. And it really helps your dream life get better and helps you be able to like do different kinds of magical or spiritual practices that really help strengthen your body, your spirit life, and you can kind of feel them kind of melding together. So anyway, was inspired by that class and have been inspired to learn about the runes the last 3 or 4 years. So I have been practicing with the runes quite a bit, and not so much throwing them. I haven't gotten into the divination part yet. What I've been doing for many years is working with candles and scribing runes into candles. So this one, the one I just showed you, the Rido, I decided, or actually I got this from her, is that it's associated with Kari, Kari, with a little accent over it, who is associated with wind. And so what I've been doing, and I thought that, down the road, I'd really like to teach a course about this, because it's a very experiential way of learning, instead of there's plenty of books out there about runes. There's a lot of people who teach really good rune classes. There's a lot of garbage about runes as well, but there's some really good teachers out there teaching about runes. I'm coming at it from I think a completely different angle, which is my impulse is always to feel the energy first. Okay. So for this, if I saw, let's say I went on the internet, went on Twitter, went to my various weather model pages that I go to for meteorologists, and I saw that a storm, or not even a storm, a moisture pattern was forming, which actually, by the way, it's forming right now. There is one right now in the Caribbean. And so what I do is I would scribe, you take a little, well, I don't have one with me, but those little tea light candles, they're about this big, and little wax tea light candles. You can get them at Walmart, for $5 for a box of 100, I think, maybe 200. And you would just scribe Rido, and you would say, Hail Kari, 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 Hail Kari. And then I forgot to mention, you would scribe an X for Gabo, Gabo. And that's basically gift. And really all I'm saying there, because I don't want to get into too much manipulation with this, and I shouldn't have said that word, but because it's not manipulation, but I should say, I don't want to get into too much strong messaging to Kari. All I'm saying to Kari is I'm honoring you, and I'm asking your, maybe your help, and I'm giving you a gift of Gabo, establishing the connection. And the reason I think this is helpful is, and now we're going to flip parts of our brain here to the other side, which is the sciencey side, which is not one of my fortes, but maybe I'll get good at it someday. But I have learned a lot from these meteorologists on Twitter, and what they've taught me. Some of them are, atmospheric scientists, and some of them are meteorologists, and they post all the time about what's going on, and patterns and things like that. Not just giving you a forecast, but they also tell you about things that prevent development, things that, things like that. And one of the things that I didn't even think of until 6 or 7 years ago, until I started working with this area, was that wind shear can kind of chop up a storm so that it doesn't, become as big or spread out. And then, of course, that's probably second knowledge, common knowledge to you if you're a science person or you really get into that. But that just didn't occur to me, So I thought, okay, well, wait a minute. If I do a candle saying Rido, with one X, Gabo, right? And I ask Kari, and I say Hail Kari 9 times, and I honor I honor him, and I light the candle. It's a kind of a gentle yet positive message saying, I see you. And you could say that into the candle. I see you, Corey. Hail, Corey. Rido, Gable. It helps if you sing while you scribe. And if you don't have a scribe, just use your fingernail. You know, you're just carving into the wax. And that, don't do anything beyond that. You know, don't like tell it what to do. Don't, you know, just, you're just saying, I see you, and hail. Not hail the thing that falls from the sky, but hail is a very traditional way of saluting, and think of it as a loving. You're also saying, I see you. I see that you exist. I see that you exist. I see that you help. I see that you help people. I see that you know, do amazing things. I'm in awe of your beauty. You know, that's what I think of hail. Heil. not hail. Okay. So it's kind of like that. It's kind of like, you know, maybe it's kind of like namaste, sort of. Not really, but it's kind of that, a cousin of that, maybe. So, you know, just reframe it in your mind. I know it's got a lot of bad connotations because we think of, you know, the guy from the 1930s who loved fascism. Anyway, let's not. I'll be happy to talk about politics in a future podcast as it relates to animism. So I'm not shying away from that. I'm just saying, because there's a lot of people on the internet who are concerned, because there's also people on the internet who are fascist, who are using names like Odin and various Nordic and Freya and Frigg and all these people, using them for their own purposes of hatred and divisiveness, and in some cases maybe even genocide. So and at its worst, but mostly, you know, just divisiveness and hate. That is not something. I'm guessing that if you're watching this, you're not that kind of person. You probably wouldn't be watching my program if you were. And if you are, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just like anybody else, a symbol and a name and a vocabulary word can be used for a lot of different reasons. So we're not doing that here. We're trying to look at the most loving, peaceful, for all beings, everyone, everything, every plant, every tree, every river, every valley, you know, etc. Okay, so yeah, so maybe I'll end it there because I wasn't sure which direction this was going to go, but I knew that I wanted to talk to you today about the weather ceremony that I did, and that this is something that we're going to be doing again at, I'm not sure the exact date, but I know we're going to do it sometime in July of 2024, which if you're watching this in June of 2024, most likely it will be in the next month to 6 weeks. And what we will be doing is we will be presenting this type of ceremony in our Patreon, which is at www.patreon.com/Shamanic Earth Medicine. And I've talked about our Patreon before, but I just want to remind everybody, a lot of the stuff that I talk to you guys about on the podcast, if you're like, okay, well, I kind of want to learn how to do this stuff, that's what the Patreon's for, you know. So the Patreon is a place where you're in a safe environment. You're in a, you know, we have a Facebook group, but it's totally private. You know, only members are in there. And then we have, you know, you can also reach us on the app. And we do various videos or live streams, as well as ceremonies every month. And they're about a lot of different things. They're not just about weather. In fact, I tend to do weather just in the summer, as far as the Patreon's concerned, but who knows, that could change. I've been focusing a lot on tobacco lately, and tobacco is a great way to get to know your plant spirits. And when I say allies, tobacco is it. Tobacco is a great ally. There's other allies, Wachuma San Pedro cactus is an ally, peyote is an ally, cacao is an ally. These sacred plants that are, and I'm actually learning through my Germanic Facebook. I also have a separate free Facebook group, which you can find on my link tree, where we talk about Nordic animism. And I've found out through Nordic animism that ale and mead, alcohol, also very sacred. We wouldn't know that in this culture we live in right now, but it is very. So anyway, back to the Patreon. If you want to learn how to do these things, or you just want to participate in this, because for me, and I feel like this helps other people too, being a part of a ceremony or participating in your own ritual and knowing how to do that, it really does make you feel like you're doing something to help climate change, not harm too many people, or maybe it'll improve things so that, we'll live on a healthy earth. It's a lot about raising consciousness, but it's also about, because there's so much spirit exchange between plants and animals and people and the earth. Our society as it is right now has forgotten that, and it's kind of a problem, big time now. So doing these rituals really helps to strengthen those connections so that it gets that connection working like a muscle, basically. If there's muscles that need to be strengthened, you have to work with them, right? And you have to do so in kind of a slow, methodical way. You don't just you don't go to a weight room and start, pulling 150-pound weights when you've never done it before, right? You start off with a pound weight or something, or less. And that's kind of how it is with our Patreon. We try to do these ceremonies in a way, and also just various live streams that aren't even ceremonies. They're just, there might be shamanic journeying that we do, always in a protected environment, of course. And if you can't make the live streams, you can always watch the recordings too. But this is a ceremony we'd like to do, this weather ceremony. We're going to try to do this in July of 2024 sometime. So either, check out the Patreon, and if you want to become a free member and just, see what it's all about, that's cool too. But we have as low as $1 a month. So, that's $12 a year. And $1 a month is, I think, a pretty darn good deal. So we also have the $5 per month is the ceremony level. And I'm not sure yet whether we're going to we might do this open to everybody, but normally we just do the ceremonies for the $5 and up people, because they require things like, supplies, and, ceremonies cost money. Not a lot, just, and most traditional societies, there is some form of payment when you do a ceremony. I know everyone talks about donations. That's true, but I've been around traditional people, and whenever there's a ceremony, people bring things, and they're not, that's a form of currency. So because it costs money, you have to buy, wax, and, if you're doing a despacho somewhere, you would have to do, get cookies and glitter and things for Pachamama, because, cacao, and you have to put all these things together. It takes time, and, and that's in a village. We're lucky. I can get most of this stuff, pretty easily, but that's, if you're wondering where, some of why certain things cost a certain amount of money, that's mostly why. Plus it's our time, and you're also getting 2 people for the price of 1. So it's me and my sister, and between us, we both have probably 35 to 35 years experience. She's had a few more years than I. I've got at least 10 plus years. So that's, I think, a pretty good deal. So yeah, but I will continue to provide more podcast episodes. I apologize that it's been so long since the last episode. I will do my best to try and be more frequent. And please leave me any messages, or there's a link in the description where you can send me a question or a comment or anything. And feel free to do that. I'm also on Instagram a lot at Now Moment Journ. I'm also on places like Facebook, and I'm on YouTube, of course. Same thing at Now Moment Journey. And you actually just check out my link tree, www.linktr.ee/Now Moment Journey, no spaces. So Now Moment Journey is usually my name, or Now Moment Journ, whether you're looking for me. So on various platforms, Pinterest, YouTube, etc. Okay. Well, thank you so much for listening. And I hope that this made sense. And I hope it was enjoyable. And I hope things find you well and happy in this summertime. And actually, we have midsummer coming around the corner, and the summer solstice very soon. Today's the 6th, and so we have very important in the Nordic calendar, and also if you're familiar with a lot of European and British Isles, summer solstice is June 21st usually, and there's also in the Nordic calendar there's a midsummer. So there's a lot of wonderful things coming up, and yeah, if you want to check out the Nordic Animism free Facebook group, completely free, that is also on my link tree, so you can check that out. All right, so that's enough for now, and I'll see you soon.